In the year of 1998, the movie Pleasantville was released. Pleasantville was regarded as a teen fantasy comedy drama. And I know many of you might be familiar with this movie, and some of you might just dismiss this movie as that black and white movie from back in the day. But Pleasantville was much more than just that little black and white movie. Let's get into it. The movie features teenager David, played by actor Tobey Maguire. David is he's a teenager. He's not a real what you consider popular teenager, but he's not necessarily considered a teenager who's on a total geek. He's somewhere in between that. He's not popular. He basically goes through life. He gets good grades, and he basically goes unnoticed. Basically, he's just a regular guy, regular teenager. If I get the best explanation of him. His sister, Jennifer, on the other hand, is completely opposite of him. She's very popular. She's like the one of the popular girls in school. So, yeah, his sister Jennifer, played by actress ReeseWitherspoon, is a little opposite than David. She's popular. She's highly popular in school. One kind of odd thing about David is he was a 1990s teenager that was a big fan of a 1950s sitcom called Pleasantville. So when there was a marathon showing of the episodes of this 1950s sitcom on TV, who was planted comfortably on the couch watching the TV intently for this Pleasantville marathon? None other than David himself. Contrary to David, his sister Jennifer was not a fan of the 1950s sitcom. So Jennifer put on a little tussle with David over the control of the remote and ultimately the TV, because she didn't want to watch the Pleasantville marathon, and David did. And in their tussle, they accidentally broke the remote. Shockingly, without calling any TV repairman at all, mysteriously a TV repairman showed up at their house, played by actor Don Knotts. During the TV repairman's chit-chat with David, he realized that both of them were big fans of that 1950s sitcom Pleasantville. And with that, the TV repairman gave David a special remote control. After the TV repairman left, David and Jennifer continued their battle over the new remote control for control over the TV. And in this tussle, Jennifer accidentally punches a red button on the new remote control. That incidental click of that button on the remote took David and Jennifer from watching the 1950s sitcom on their TV in the 1990s to actually being a part of the actual sitcom in the 1950s. They were actually the teenage kids in the sitcom. So now David and Jennifer were now in the 1950s sitcom playing the characters of Mary Sue and Bud. Not long after becoming a part of the 1950s sitcom family, David and Jennifer came across the mysterious TV repairman on the 1950s television, and they were telling him they want to go back to their 1990s, to their life and everything. And the TV repairman he didn't go along with that. He was against that, and he basically referred to them as being ungrateful. They should be happy to be part of this 1950s TV sitcom classic, and they're showing ungratefulness. So he refused to send them back to their 1990s because, as he put it, this 1950s Pleasantville was the perfect place to be. Everything was great and grand there, and they should be grateful. And he basically left them at that. With David and Jennifer now portraying Mary Sue and Bud, their TV parents now were Betty Parker, played by actress Joan Allen, and their dad was George Parker, played by William H. Macy. Although David was a little perplexed by being in this 1950s sitcom, he was also intrigued by being Bud in this 1950s sitcom, because after all, this was his favorite show. He loved this show and he knew every episode, so he was mildly intrigued by playing the character of Bud in his favorite TV sitcom. On the other hand, his sister Jennifer, she was very much against being Mary Sue in this 50s sitcom. First of all, she didn't like the sitcom. She wasn't a big fan of it, and she just wanted to get back to her popular life in the 1990s. That all changed when Jennifer found out that Skip Martin, played by Paul Walker, a popular athlete and all that, was interested in her TV alter ego, Mary Sue. David, keeping to his TV character of Bud, went to his job at the soda shop, and this is where we are introduced to the soda shop owner, Bill Johnson, played by actor Jeff Daniels. Bill was a very regimented person. He was just very regimented and strict and regimented, kind of boring and tight and just seemed unhappy and uninspired, and he was very pessimistic, and everything had to be done in an order, in a specific order, or he couldn't function almost. He's very neurotic, I would say. So yeah, that's what Bill, the soda shop owner, Bill was. That was kind of how he was. Jennifer aka Mary Sue, eventually gets Skip Martin to ask her out on a date, and they end up at Lover's Lane. At Lover's Lane, she proceeds to rock his world. After his encounter with Mary Sue, aka Jennifer, Skip Martin started to see colors, like the colors of the flower or the rose. After that initial sighting of the red color on that rose by Skip Martin, other teenagers from the activities they participated in began to see color as well. Some of the teenagers actually became colored themselves in full color from the activities they partook in. So it was becoming a mixed town, so to speak. With the town becoming a little bit more colorful, it provoked or triggered Betty to ask Jennifer, aka Mary Sue, this question.
What goes on up at Lover's Lane?
What do you mean?
Well, you hear these things lately. Kids spending so much time up there.
Jennifer, aka Mary Sue, didn't only tell Betty about what goes on at Lover's Lane, but she also gave her some insights into self-enjoyment and self-pleasurement as well. So she really opened her up to some ideas. And with that info, Betty took it into her own hands, literally in the bathtub, where she took a fondness to her own self. Let's just say that. She brought herself to such a crescendo, she almost burnt down the entire house. Good thing David, aka Bud, was able to show the firemen what the fire hose is used for. After David, aka Bud, was lauded as a hero because they don't have fires in Pleasantville, so no one really knew what that fire hose was for. So for his knowledge of knowing that the fire hose is used to put out fires, which they don't have in Pleasantville, he was lauded as a hero in the town. He was even approached by a high school cheerleader named Margaret, played by actress Marley Shelton, and she cooked him up some cookies, which David, aka Bud, knew that those cookies, since he was so proficient on the TV series Pleasantville, he knew those cookies wasn't for his character of Bud. She made those cookies for another character named Whitey, and he told her that. He insisted that he won't take those cookies because those cookies are for Whitey, but Margaret insisted, and she forced them upon David, aka Bud, to take the cookies, and she made them specifically for him. So now they're changing episodes, if they haven't already. In Pleasantville, where many books that were deemed unpleasant were blank, David, aka Bud, would tell the teenagers in this town about certain books. He would talk about them. Well, actually, his sister Jennifer, aka Mary Sue, started telling the local teenagers about certain books, and the pages filled in. Like, the pages were originally blank in those books, but the pages started filling in, and she started talking about the story. And Jennifer went to her brother David, aka Bud, because she couldn't remember a lot of, past a certain point of the stories, and she asked him would he finish the story. She only reached a certain point, and David, of course, obliged. And as he continued the story of these books, the pages filled in of these books. And like I said, the pages were originally blank on these books, but by him telling the story of those books, the pages filled in for the teenagers, and they were grateful for that and happy. With a great portion of the town changing color into color from black and white, a lot of things happening. People, more of the town is getting enlightened to different things that they wasn't enlightened to before, and becoming more fluid and less rigid. The mayor of the town of Pleasantville, Big Bob, played by actor J.T. Walsh, decides to visit George Parker and try to get him to get a collabo with him. Basically, collab with him, since they both still were in black and white, to try to get George on his side there and say, hey, let us against those quote-unquote colored. And he also made George a member of his mayoral town delegation, so to speak. To celebrate the news, George calls out to his wife Betty to bring out some tasty treats that she makes back there in the kitchen, with no response. David, aka Bud, does hear George's calls for Betty, and told him he tells George he'll go get her. David, aka Bud, finds Betty in the kitchen, and she's in full vivid color. So she did hear George's calls, but she was kind of ignoring it because she knew she couldn't go out there in the living room to face him in full color like that. The shock might have killed him. So David, aka Bud, came up with the bright idea of using makeup to cover up her bright color, and giving her the dull color of the black and white grayish look. Taking a cue from Bill's admission of loving art and loving to draw, and feeling his passion that he had for art and drawing, David, aka Bud, he got a art book from the library and gave it to Bill at the malt shop. And this art book was filled with vivid, colorful pictures of art. And of course, Bill was he was in ecstasy over this art book. David, aka Bud, even worked up the courage to ask Margaret out on a date, and of course she said yes. In fact, he could hardly contain his excitement. At this point, the TV repairman showed back up in the movie, via the TV of course, and he wanted to bring David and Jennifer back to the present day. But David, aka Bud, rejected that idea. Partly because of his upcoming date with Margaret, but also he wanted to see his mission that he had started in the town of Pleasantville to bring change to them. He wanted to see it come full circle. So yeah, but the TV repairman wanted to bring him back to the present day because he felt like David and Jennifer messed up the great town of Pleasantville already. They didn't mess it up already. They didn't kind of messed it up. So he wanted to bring them back. But like I said, David rejected it. Mostly because his upcoming date with Margaret. But also he wanted to see what he had started to come full circle as far as in the town of Pleasantville. Their beautiful date is interrupted by rains, and David and Margaret gather under, some shelter with other teenagers that are at Lover's Lane at that time, and all the other ones are very terrified because they've never seen rain in Pleasantville. And David, aka Bud, assures all of them that it's just rain. It won't harm them. It's okay. It's just rain. You're just gonna get wet. And he assured them that it was basically harmless. The rain was harmless because the residents, all of them, Margaret and the other teenagers, they were very terrified of this rain. This was very unfamiliar to them. So David, aka Bud, had to reassure them that this rain was harmless. As David, aka Bud, took Margaret home from their date, he presented her with an umbrella to protect her from the rain. And this was a significant part of the movie for Margaret because it was her accepting change. It was her accepting an independence and a change to battle the elements of rain, which Pleasantville never had before. And with that, it also changed her outer appearance to colorful and a vivid color. No longer just that boring black and white or shades of gray. She was vividly colorful. In the meantime, while it was raining, Betty, being out on a walk, found herself at the soda shop owned by Bill, under the guise of she seen the artwork he had painted his windows with, inspired by the art book that David, aka Bud, gave him. He was inspired by the colors in there. He did some painting and some art on his windows of that soda shop. So that's what Betty had gave the reason of coming into his soda shop as she was taking a walk. But I believe that she was headed that way anyway, because I think when they met earlier, there was an instant attraction between them. And even in this photo, it looked like Betty has an attraction to Bill here. So that's where Betty spent her rainy night, is in the soda shop with Bill, and both were glad to be there. While viewing the artwork that Bill was sharing with her, Betty, the rainy day wasn't an enjoyable experience for everyone. George, for instance, was looking for his wife Betty when he came in. Like she normally runs to him when he comes in and says, "Honey, I'm home." And no Betty running to him when, "Honey, I'm home" this time. And he comes in and he searches the house looking for Betty, and no Betty. And he goes around saying, "Where's my dinner?" all through the house. And no response from Betty. And this was disheartening to George, to say the least.
6:30? We were gonna... You know.
Oh, I can't. I'm studying.
Wow. In this part of the movie, you see the difference in Jennifer, aka Mary Sue. Looks like Pleasantville has had a more positive effect on her. You seen Skip Martin down there begging for her to come out and do what they have done previous, and she was having no parts of it. I mean, so it looked like Pleasantville has had a positive effect on Jennifer, aka Mary Sue. Meanwhile, George trudged his way in the rain to the local bowling alley to hook up with his buddies, we told his buddies the story about his wife Betty not being there when he did exactly like he always does and say, "Honey, I'm home," and put his hands on the thing and no answer from her. And some of the buddies reiterated their tales with their significant other or wives, telling how their wives seem to have, they've noticed changes in their wives as well. And this is, so the town changes have affected their relationships basically. So they had their little sewing circle about the changes affecting their marital bliss as well. So yeah, so I guess he needed that support. After a few hours spent with Betty, Bill wakes up to full color. Not just his windows of his soda shop, but himself as well. When Betty returned home, George was there waiting to lay down the law. Basically told her that she's gonna be there at the house and with his dinner cooked and everything, and that's just the way it is. He's not taking no shorts on that. Basically was trying to lay down the law. And Betty threw a curveball at George and told him, no, she's not. Basically told him that she's up. She's an independent woman. She finna do her own thing the way she wants to do it. Basically, that's the way she told him in a very polite way. So him trying to lay down the law actually failed. This also marks the first time George has seen his wife Betty in her colored state. And he basically told her that it will go away. It's something that will go away. Wear some makeup. You can cover it up with some makeup. And Betty told him confidently, I don't want it to go away. And I'm not going to hide it. And I embrace this look. It's beautiful on me and I embrace it. That's basically what she told him. So she wasn't taking no shorts with George here in this scene. She was letting him know that she was her own woman and her own person. After a town meeting of the colorization of their town, many businesses start putting up signs, no colors. Because of the new penalties enacted at the town meeting about color and the promotion of color in the town, Bill begins to scrape off the colored mural he had on the window of his soda shop. Until he looks up and sees Betty coming towards him. He proceeded to paint a nude picture of Betty on the window instead. As Betty is leaving the Bill's soda shop, young men in the town began to harass her. But David, aka Bud, comes to her rescue. This act of courage turns David aka Bud, into vivid color. The town, vividly upset at the new photo of Betty on the window of that soda shop, went to town on the soda shop. Not only the window that showed a naked Betty on it, but the whole soda shop. They just tore up everything and went wild there. Went wild, just tearing up everything. Showing a defiance to the town's government mandated no vivid or loud colors to be displayed in the town. Bill, with the help of David, painted a bigger, more colorful mural on the brick of the building, which is a violation of the law in Pleasantville, which actually landed them in jail. And David, aka Bud, got a visit from George, who told him that his mom, Betty, had left, which David, aka Bud, already knew. But George also came to show a little support for Bud, aka David, as well. On Bill and David, aka Bud's trial day, officiated by the one and only Big Bob, who was the mayor, David, aka Bud, took this time to make an emotional plea to George, who was a member of the mayor's board. He talked to George about his wife Betty, who left him, and how maybe it wasn't just the food and the dinner and all that you missed. Maybe it's something else that you can't even describe. He basically had George look deeper inside of himself. With tears in his eyes, George was instructed to look up into the balcony at his wife, who had left him, under the instruction of David, aka Bud, who was telling George to look at her and look how beautiful she is. He followed that up by telling George, don't you want to tell her? Don't you want to be able to tell her how beautiful she is? Look at her up. David was just adamant to George about look up there at the balcony. Look at how beautiful she is. Wouldn't you like to tell her that? Wouldn't you like to tell? He was reiterating that. Wouldn't you like to tell her that? And with George getting in touch with his great feelings he had for his wife, who had left him, and dealing with the emotion of her, of loving her and missing her and all of that, he turned to vivid color. And the majority of the people that were in this town hall meeting were affected by the plea as well, and affected by George's tears and all of that, and they changed to vivid color as well. One of the few people who was still black and white, or gray, the shades of gray, was Big Bob, the mayor himself. And David, aka Bud, used the tactic of tweaking at Big Bob's anger, the emotion of anger with him, and it was successful. Big Bob was soon as colorful as all the rest. But the one thing, Big Bob didn't like it. Look at him, he's gone. They come out the door and they find their whole town is colorful now. All the beautiful colors. The TV, the color TV and everything. They wake up to the beauty of color. After this, David pretty much realized that his mission was pretty much fulfilled at this point, and he was ready to go back to his present day in the 1990s. His sister Jennifer, though, made the choice to stay in the past, citing that she has a better chance in the past where she's at to make it to college. Telling David, do you think you really got a chance of making it in college back in the present day? So she elected to stay in Pleasantville in the past times. And David wished her the best and said that he'll come visit her. So he's gonna do time travel sometime in the future to visit his sister. That's what he said to her. Before David leaves, of course, David, aka Bud, leaves. He of course says goodbye to his love, Margaret, and promises to never forget her. He also says goodbye to his second mom, Betty, who gives him a cardigan sweater to take on to stay warm wherever he's going. And she tells him that she loves him and she's proud of him. And he returns that and tells her that he loves her as well. So sweet. Upon returning to the present day in the 1990s, David comes across his crying mother in the kitchen. She's very, she just feels like her life is not where it should be. Like she doesn't have the right house, the right relationship, the right car, the right this, the right that, and all that. So she's crying about where she is in her life at this point. David was able to cheer his moms up, though, some by sharing with her his newfound wisdom, letting her know there's no right house, there's no right car, there's none of that. There's no such thing as a right car and a right house and a right life and all that. And he really cheered her up with this wisdom that he gave her, and she was very surprised by his newfound wisdom as well. Back in Pleasantville, Betty and George even became cordial again in a more colorful Pleasantville with unknown possibilities. And yes, Bill was still in the picture. This movie definitely gets a big thumbs up from me. This is in my opinion, one of the best movies ever. I mean, not just the cinematography, which was great in this movie. I think it was some clever writing. The clever writing of this movie. This movie was very cleverly written, and I can appreciate that as well. The story was kind of complex. It had a lot of complexity to it. It was about discrimination. It was about segregation and all of this. And it was about a fear of dealing with anything that might be unpleasant or have any unpleasant scene to it. And it's the fear of the unknown, and it's just like it was very hindering. It was showing hindrances, repressed feelings, want to repress the feelings of others as well, and it just showed it had a lot of levels to this movie, in my opinion. The one thing that shined brightly in this movie to me is that even in all our imperfections, life is beautiful. But some of the people in this movie and the characters in this movie and Pleasantville in itself represented a place where they were trying to create a happiness that wasn't based on nothing real. It was based on planning out and structuring your happiness. So nothing outside of the small box that you was in could amass to being happy. But like I said, even in all our imperfections, life is still beautiful. The unknown, the unexpected, and all those things add beauty to life, add flavor to life, in my opinion. But I hope you all enjoyed my video. I hope you check this movie out. I checked it out a couple of times, so I know this movie. You might have to check it out a couple of times to catch everything, the little subtleties in this movie here. But it's well worth it, in my opinion. And like I said, I give it a big thumbs up. If you've never seen this movie, I suggest that you check it out. With that, I'm going to end the video right here. Please feel free to like, share, comment on this video. Also subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. After subscribing, please click that little notification bell in order to be notified of any new uploads from this channel. I thank you all for your support. I truly appreciate it. With that, I am out on this one. Hopefully I'll see you all in the next one. Peace! One love. Stay safe. Continue to be blessed.